And I'm so excited to have Helena Woods with me today. We've been like eyeballing each other on Instagram for a year, but we never actually met until today. So it's kind of crazy. Like we've been going back and forth in the messages and chatting, and she even told me some really cool stuff about astrocartography and what's actually happening in the US right now and kind of updating us with best places to move abroad to. And so this episode, I'm so excited to dive into everything astrocartography because she is the leading astrocartography expert online. So if y'all haven't followed her, you need to follow her. I'll put her info in the description below. But Helena, thank you so much for being here with us.
So exciting. I mean, astrocartography is such a cool, almost like kindred spirit to the move abroad content on the internet because it shows like where are your best places to live? How can you make it easier for yourself to focus and target in on those places that are more supportive for you?
I love that. So, for people who have never heard about astrocartography, like how would you explain what it is, and how can it help people choose where to live?
It's essentially the astrology of place, the astrology of location. So, just like how when you were born, the exact minute, the exact time, exact location of where you were born, you have a birth chart. So, it shows you this birth chart kind of is like a quick snapshot of your life story and your blueprint for how you go about life. It shows you a lot of different aspects of you, how you communicate, your career natal promise, what you're meant to be doing, your relationships, all the things. But astrocartography in specifically is about where your special locations are in the world. So it shows you, where are your stories? Where are things happening for you in life? Where are there themes happening for you in the world? But also the energies and how you feel in certain parts of the world. So if you've ever noticed that, like, why is it every time I go to this city, these stories or themes keep coming up for me? Or why is it that all my friends and all my relationships always seem to come from the Pacific Northwest? Or why is it that, every time I go back to Spain, I feel this way? It's because you have a special map of the world that was based on your exact birth chart, exact birth time that shows you what is happening in those places in the world.
Wow. And for those that are like beginners, because I would say I'm a beginner, and this isn't something I want to clear the murky water here. So, is this something that's like woo woo? Because I know when people hear like astro, and some people are very open minded that are listening to it, and I'm all for it. Like, have an open mind because I think there's so many unexplainable things in the universe. But what would you say to somebody that's a little bit hesitant about like astrology or things like this? Is this like a very woo woo thing only for like super spiritual people?
I would say, well, astrology is not new age at all. It's been around since the ancient times. Literally, people use the stars, the cosmos, for planning farming techniques and for using techniques for agricultural planning, like how to plan out their farming for the year since first century BC and even way before that. People have been using astrology to time events. And specifically, it was used for farming, but also it was used to predict the downfall of kings and ancient civilizations. So astrology is so ancient and has been around since the beginning. But when we got to, later on, religion, Christianity got really big, the Age of Enlightenment, and there started getting a lot of pushback on astrology. But it's so ancient in its form. And what it does is it shows cycles. All it does is show patterns, cycles. So just like the moon waxes and wanes and shows when the energy is collectively rising and then getting quiet again and then building and then quieting down and breaking down again. That's just how it is with the planets too. And so the planets, when they make certain configurations or geometrical patterns, they're showing themes or symbolism of what's happening on Earth. And every time we get a similar cycle where it happens again at another time in life, a repetition, it's just showing that coming up again in the collective consciousness. And so all it is it's signal. It's a reflection. It's a mirror of that which is happening on Earth. It's not causing anything to happen. I like to describe it as a clock on the wall. It's not like the clock's making it 3 p.m., but it's just showing, hey, it's 3 p.m. This is what's happening right now. And so I make predictions based on the news, what's happening in the world, using these cycles to better inform people of how to work with the energy and kind of what to prepare and expect ahead.
Wow. Oh my gosh, I love this explanation. That was so thorough. Thank you.
Yeah.
We were chatting before actually on her podcast, which I'm going to drop the link to that as well for you guys. But okay, this is kind of just a snapshot. Helena pulled up for me my astro chart for astrocartography to pretty much, look at where all my different lines are going through on the map in the world. And you know what's crazy is I never even had heard of I didn't know where my lines were going through. She told me that I had a Pluto line going through Bilbao, Spain, which is the first place I decided to move abroad to in 2015. And it's that line she told me was a transformation, a letting go, and an identity shift. When I moved abroad to Bilbao, Spain, that was a huge shift for me, knowing like it basically taught me that I don't want to be in the US anymore. And I totally like changed my personality and my identity shifted. So she just told me that. But it's crazy because I kind of already knew that, but I didn't know that my astro chart showed that. So there's too many similarities here. She also told me that I have home places that are like Jupiter and the moon lines that were going through various parts of Spain. And so that's just really, really amazing because I feel at home in Spain. And she also mentioned with love, what was that love line called? And you
Oh,
said
yeah.
I would meet my husband there. And I did.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the ultimate love relationship line. I call it the honeymooners line, but it's like, so we have like 44 lines on our map that are going through different parts of the world, and they all represent specific different things. And in Spain, you've got that home line, you got that confidence line, but then you also, closer to Barcelona, on the eastern side of Spain, you have the honeymooners line, or the ultimate love and relationship line. So it shows, where is your spouse from? Where is your partner from? Where do you meet the love of your life? This is literally the number one biggest line for that. And it's going right through that area. And it's just crazy. Did you meet him in Barcelona?
Yeah, we met riding bikes in the little beach town of Barcelona called Poblenou. Yeah, so that was in 2017. So
2017.
I did not know that I had this Venus line going through Barcelona. So that makes a lot of sense because I met Dan and we've been married. We've been together for what is it, 8 years, married for 4. And then she also had mentioned there was a Uranus line going through Barcelona, which I took the notes, by the way, Helena, because I was like, this is some crazy stuff right here. Saying that my living situation may change a lot in Barcelona, or could have, or does change a lot in Barcelona. And it's very true because I have lived in like 5 different places in Barcelona. So that's quite accurate. And then she said that my Neptune IC line, which is like a spiritual connection or like past life. I think I'm being a good student right now. By the way,
Yes.
I'm learning
Yes.
from you. This is what I love about what you're
Yeah.
teaching everybody. But she basically was saying that that one is also here in Spain. And that's why I feel so connected to Spain because I have that, and it just reaffirms it. I have this
Yeah.
line going through it.
You essentially have 6 astrocartography lines, all within an orb of influence in Spain. And for anyone who doesn't know what orbs of influence means, it means that you don't have to live right directly on a planetary line. You could be a couple of 100 miles away and you're still getting a heavy dose of that energy. And so you've got 6 of them going through Spain. That is wild. I don't see a lot of that. It just shows that that part of the world, Spain, is such a huge part of your life. And there's so much about career, entrepreneurship, innovation, home, finding that place of home and happiness, and also love. And yes, the one of the more challenging aspects of it is like the home life. You can move a lot with the Uranus, planet of change and upheaval, and a lot of unsettledness on the house or residence point. But there's just so many other beautiful things about Spain for you that's just so nice. And I was also telling her on my podcast that like she's literally living your natal promise, the ruler of your career in the ninth house of foreign visas, passports, and moving abroad and being overseas, and then connecting that back to the fourth house of home and helping people find home in the world. Just so cool that you're living your natal promise.
That is so interesting. And I appreciate you for sharing this. And we're kind of like sharing this just to kind of, I think it's nice. I'm happy to share it. Like, I don't care to share my personal information, but I think it's important because then it kind of gives you a taste that, like, wow, this actually was 100% accurate. We didn't feed it any
Nope.
data, and
Nope.
I'm living the thing that you're saying. You know what I mean? Like, so this
Yeah.
is crazy to me. I first time I've heard about this
Yeah.
with talking to you today. Can you like also share maybe a story of a client, because I know you have a lot of different programs showing people how to understand where the best places are for them to live with all these different lines, which we had talked about. Can you kind of share a story of your client who, I mean, now I can be a story, but whose life really changed after moving to a place that you guys worked through and worked on?
Yeah. I have some of my favorite client stories are when someone comes to me and they're single and they want to find love. And so I tell them these specific cities or places or states are places where you'll meet the love of your life. And I've had a lot of clients where they then move to those places that I tell them to during a time when there's an opening for love and relationship themes coming about in their lives. They go there during that time and then they're engaged or they're married. One of my favorite clients, I told her to move from Arizona to San Francisco, California. And I said, the timing is now. This is the year you're going to meet your partner. Go to this love and marriage line out here in San Francisco. She went out there, got that, met her partner, got engaged, I think 6 months later, and now she's married. So it's like, it's these kinds of stories. So I had another client who she was living in Denmark, and I told her that Montana was a love spot for her. And she was swiping on the dating apps in Denmark, but set the
Wow.
location for Montana. Like I think it was Bozeman, Montana. And met someone there, and now she relocated and she lives in Montana with her partner. So it's just
Wow.
it's like things like that I love. I think the love and relationship stories are my favorite.
Yeah.
But even just in my own life, I never felt home in the world living in the United States. I never felt a sense of home, like this was where I belong. And I
Right.
didn't know about astrocartography until I moved to France. So I moved to France in 2018 with my husband for his job. He's teaching English here. And then I was living here and I felt this sense of like, gosh, I feel like I know this place, I belong here. I feel a sense of like ease. Like I don't know if it's a past life or it's just this feeling of like it's familiar to me.
Right.
Like I feel like I can put roots here. That I then learned about astrocartography, went down, I looked at all the places I had traveled to and lived in the world and noticed that all those lines were exactly specifically showing the story of what was happening in my life in those places. So like I met my husband on my relationship line in New York. And
Wow.
I had a huge career in the theater as an actress when I was living in California on my career, like kind of like a fame actress career line in California.
Wow.
And then I have my home line in France, which is literally it's a specific line that represents feeling a sense of safety, home, or like love for a country or a land or a place,
Wow.
literally going through France. And the thing for anyone who's, I don't know, kind of skeptical about astrology is astrology is so specific. It's not like you can just make it work or make it fit. Venus, the planet of love, beauty, and relationships, represents those specific things, right? Or like the sun represents creativity, Mars represents entrepreneurship and business, right? So, like all these planets, they represent such specific things. The
Wow.
signs are very specific, they color the tonality of how that planet moves about in life. And then you've got these different areas of life that are activated, whether it's career, relationships, home, or self. You've got all these specific areas of life that these planets affect. So we can get so specific on like what a story is for someone in the world just by looking at their map.
Wow. Oh, this is so cool. I love this. So, what is you think? the biggest, first of all, are you living in Paris, right?
Yeah, I'm living in Paris.
Got it. Um, what's the biggest misconception people have about like astrocartography from what you've seen?
Biggest misconception is that you have to live right on a line. This is something I see all the time. People will always say, all my lines are going through the ocean, or, my line is going in a place that I don't want to live in. And it's because they're being very literal. They're looking at a line and saying, okay, I have to be right on that line in that city. You totally don't. You just have to be within proximity of it. Think
Right.
of it as kind of like an energy. It's radiating outwards. The further away you are from a line, the less intense it is. And the closer you get to it, it's kind of like you're turning the power up
Right.
on a planet all the way to 100. It's like you're turning the dial up to 100 when you get right on a line. And it can be kind of intense for people. When they're living right on a line, it's like, boosh, you're getting hit a lot by that planet. And so, as an example, when I lived directly on my Venus line in Strasbourg, France, which is an Alsace region closer to the border of Germany, that was my favorite place in all of France that I've lived. I've lived in Corsica, Biarritz, Metz, Paris now. I've lived all over France.
Wow.
And where I loved the most, it was because I was directly on that Venus love, beauty, loving where I live home line. And but when I'm still within orb of that in all of France, like I lived in Biarritz for a year and I was several hundred miles away from it, but I still got it. But
Right.
it's kind of like the closer you are to it, the more intense it is. And so you don't have to live on a planetary line. If you see your lines, crisscrossing right outside of Portugal in the ocean, you do not have to move on a cruise ship. You do not have to become a mermaid. You could literally live in Portugal and you're getting that story.
That's so cool. Wow. This is so interesting. So, what I thought was really interesting too was I saw a reel that Helena just recently did about her US predictions. Now, she's not only helping people understand where they actually should move, but she can also make predictions and see from these charts what's going on in the US. And I know a lot of people listening are pretty nervous about things that are happening, potential wars that are happening. And so, can you kind of tell us what those predictions are that you made and they're actually coming true?
Yeah. Yeah, 2 years ago, I got on YouTube and I basically made a video preparing people that the US would be entering its Uranus return, which happens once every 84 years. So it's a cycle that has only happened three other times in life. Once during the American Revolution, another time was 84 years later during the US Civil War. The other time after that was when the US involved itself in World War II, which was 84 years later. And now it's happening again now. This begins July 7th, and it's going to be here until 2033. So this is a cycle where the US is always engaged in a massive world conflict or civil internal war within the states. The other thing was in that video, I talked about how Donald Trump's chart is so kind of correlated, his fate, his natal promise with his birth chart. He enters the peak period of his entire life in beginning April of 2025. So everything that he's done up until April of 2025 was just a setup. It was just a beginning. It was literally a building up phase to what this new cycle of his life is about. And it's him being in the peak, most active, defining part of his life biography. When people read about Donald Trump 100 years from now, they're going to be remembering what he did during these years, starting in April of 2025. And so I was looking at his peak periods, his life biography, and corresponding that to the United States birth chart and the cycles within the United States. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy about what's happening with Donald Trump, how it's going to involve him. So all of this to say, we've also have other planetary things that are happening that haven't happened like since the Civil War. And so we're seeing one, war years, and two, technology like massively changing. And there's a lot of things that are showing that. The Pluto in Aquarius, which hasn't happened since the French Revolution, Industrial Revolution, these themes we're seeing. So all this to say, a lot of people are wanting to move abroad right now. And especially this year, because Jupiter's in Cancer, which is all about the collective need and focus about, asking ourselves, where do I want to live? Where is home? Where do I feel like I belong? And where in the world do I feel like my needs are being met? This is a transit I've been waiting for several years because I knew this was going to get huge once we entered this transit. And now, all of the clients I've worked with, over 2,500 clients one-on-one, everyone's coming back and like, okay, I'm finally ready to move, Helena. What's the next step? What do I do? And I send them to you. I'm like, go see Shauna. She'll help you.
Oh,
because people are like now ready. I've given them the exact places. I've told them where it's going to be safest for them to live, where it's going to be more ease in their lives, where their stories are. Now go to Shauna to help figure out the logistics of how to do that. But I essentially help people find the exact locations where to be and when.
cool. Wow. So the thing that I think is interesting, and I just find it fascinating. So, we don't want to invoke fear in people in the US, right? And I think you had mentioned to me that, like, and I know this is kind of a crazy thing to say, but like, I'm nervous that, like,
Mm-hmm.
is nuclear attacks like a fear for, my family in LA, or, you know what I mean? Because I'm from LA. And I know you said some of the worst places to be during these years are like the West Coast and the East Coast. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I know you can't predict things, but like,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the fear I'm having, is like, are we going to be attacked? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Mm-hmm.
obviously people are thinking about that.
Yeah, I think the big places are summer of 26, July 4th of 2026, the 250th anniversary of the United States. Literally, there's a transit. For anyone who does know astrology who's listening, it's a Mars Uranus transit in the seventh house, which is open enemies for the United States chart. This is happening specifically, it's really activated on the East Coast. So I'm looking at DC, I'm looking at New York. Those are the places I'm really concerned about for the summer of 26. Um, I think for the US, the West Coast, there's just a lot of change, rebellion, upheaval,
Right.
social unrest, protests. That energy is really coloring the West Coast for the next several years. And
Nice.
the East Coast is where I'm looking more at like attacks or foreign conflict kind of coming in, is the East Coast specifically. Donald Trump has his Mars line going right through Washington, D.C., which is usually a place where if there is conflict, it's involving the US president on that line and it's going right through DC for Trump.
Wow. Okay, interesting. So I mean, y'all know what's going on. We've kind of talked what's going on macro, at the whole world level, right? Trump level, we've talked also micro, how you guys can figure out where the best places are to move. Is there a final secret you would like to give? I always ask this to everybody. Your final secret for those on the fence of making their move abroad in under a year.
I
Because
would
it is
say,
called Untold Secrets.
yeah.
Living
I
overseas, and you live overseas.
yeah, I mean my biggest secret is do it now. Like plan now because we have Saturn and Neptune at the 0 degree world point in Aries, which is going right through France and Paris. And then it's going to be moving across through Germany, Austria, Italy, and moving east through those countries. This is the year to lock in your visas, lock in your passports, your dual citizenship by descent, all the things you want to do is really try to aim to do it this year until summer of 26 because this is the most favorable time for relocation. This is the most favorable time for moving and finding home is this year until summer of 26.
Okay.
And like a little secret is like look at Spain, look at Portugal. Those are places I'm really recommending people go to, especially if your astrocartography is more supportive for you, because those are places that I don't think are going to be as affected as other countries.
Okay.
And thinking about immigration crackdowns, boundaries with borders, these are themes I'm looking at in the US. That's when it literally started, which was March of 2025 was when
Okay.
this transit got really big in the US, but it's also activated in March in Europe too. And so I think Spain and Portugal are like a good secret of like places to look into.
So thank you so much for that. But just to kind of give a real life example, if your lines are going, a lot of them are going through France, and then you just said that that world line. I don't know if I'm butchering it, probably. is moving across Eastern Europe. How are you deciding? Are you going to stay in France? Are you, how are you deciding how to move through these predictions and like
Yeah.
what it's showing you?
I mean, this kind of is like I'm always using the astrocartography of where I'm best supported. So if I see a hard line for me on my map in a place that does look easier for the world, I'm not going to move there because the energy of that experience, it's going to color my story and my filter differently. So think of it kind of like as we're all going to be going through conflict or going through something. It's all going to affect us in some way or another, right?
Right.
But do you want to navigate those challenges from a place of ease, flow, resilience, being able to bounce back from setbacks, being able to move through challenges with more grace and ease? Or do you want to, live in a place where it is more challenging for you energetically? So it just feels harder. You can't avoid your timing. You can't avoid what's going to happen in the world, but you can put yourself in a better place that supports you. And that's why I love this aspect of astrology, is because traditional ancient astrology is a lot about timing. Trust your timing, fatedness, that's literally what it was used for since the beginning. But locational astrology is so much more about free will.
Wow.
Where do you want to experience your timing? How does that place like change your filter and how you approach and feel and see life? And so for me, I live in France. I love where I live on my astrocartography is best for me and my husband here. But I am looking at places to move north. So I'm still staying on my beautiful lines, but getting to closer to Denmark is what I'm considering right now. Just thinking about future possibilities,
Okay.
and just also like logistics, like climate change. Right now it's a heat wave in France, and my husband and I are like, we're just kind of like, okay, I think we want to be in a colder climate. Also, the French language. My husband's fluent. I speak French. I can get around, but it's harder to form close community with people if you're not fluent in French. And I'm not fluent, and it's been really hard for me to become fluent. And so we are considering just places logistically where it's like our values are being met. We're in a
Right.
place that supports our values and what we believe in, but also it'll be a bit easier to find community and colder climate and things like that. So I'm always considering my astrocartography, my husband's astrocartography, and then our personal preferences and values.
I love that. And that's honestly everything I teach besides the astrocartography. So I think it's very interesting to be able to bring this in.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for coming on. And can you please tell me how people can get in touch with you? I know you have a lot of different programs and courses and ways for people to, work with you. How does this happen, girl?
Yeah, you can follow me over on Instagram at Ms. Helena Woods. And I have a free cheat sheet that will help walk you through the different lines on your map and an introduction of what they all mean. So you can get that at helenawoods.com/cheat sheet. Download that cheat sheet. You'll find everything there. And then you can head over to astro.com, and Astro Click Travel is the name of the feature where you can find your map of the world. And yeah, I have also like a $22 masterclass that goes into the top 5 secrets of being able to accurately read your astrocartography map in an easier way. And so that $22 masterclass is really amazing. And you can find all of that on my website at helenawoods.com.
And I'm going to put it below as well. So, oh
Perfect.
my gosh, so great, Helena. Now, do you work with people one on one?
Yes, I do. I do one-on-one readings, and I have my clients that I see. I have a wait list that's pretty long, but you can always join that wait list. And then I also have a directory of readers, of trained certified readers that I've trained through my programs, my certification program. So you can book with one of them. If you don't want to wait 3-4 months to see me, you can always book with one of my readers on my team.
That's so cool. Oh my gosh. I want to learn how to do this. I want to be a reader.
Yeah. So
Not
fun.
necessarily to like, I mean, just for me to know it.
Yeah.
I
Oh
want,
yeah.
higher education, like, that's how I see it, is like
Yeah.
continuing education.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was so informative. Reach out to Helena, gobble up the cheat sheet. Hopefully, you guys can get on her wait list for a reading. And it was so great to have
Thank you, Shauna. Thanks for having me on.
you. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup.